Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting Unit 9. Unit 9 is going to be mostly on geometry. So our title today is Polygons, and our goal is today I will learn to classify, which means to organize, polygons based on their attributes. Okay, our lesson today is very different. It's not going to be our normal lesson where I model problems and then we do some together. It's going to be just a lot of note-taking. This unit is also going to be very different because all of these notes we're going to take today are words you're going to have to memorize. So where most of the other units are learning and understanding how to do math problems, this is going to be that you understand and memorize a lot of vocabulary. Okay, so we're going to get started. Our first vocabulary word is a polygon. A polygon is a closed, which means it does not look like that. That is not closed because there's an opening. So it's a closed, flat, which means it's not three-dimensional shape with at least 3 sides. So it has to be a closed, flat shape with at least 3 sides. Okay, a regular polygon is when all sides are equal. So a good example of that would be a square. A square has all sides equal, and it is a polygon. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, also maybe a hexagon, a 6-sided shape where all the sides are equal. That would be a good example of one. What would not be an example of one would be a rectangle. That is not considered a regular polygon. Okay, an irregular polygon then just means that all sides are not equal. And actually most shapes are irregular. Okay, our next set of vocabulary words is the 2 types of polygons we're going to be working with. The first type of polygon we're going to work with is a triangle. A triangle is a polygon that has 3 sides and 3 angles. And then the other type of polygon we're going to work with is a quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is also considered a polygon, and it has 4 sides, and we get that from the word quad, 4 sides and 4 angles. Okay, this word attributes was in our goal of today. So our goal was that we're going to be able to organize and understand these shapes based on their attributes. Attributes are properties or characteristics of a shape. I might have to go down there. I ran out of space. So they're properties or characteristics of a shape. So one attribute of a triangle would be that it has 3 sides. It's kind of like we would, if I was describing a shape. That's what it is. It's the characteristics that I'm going to describe the shape with. Okay, the next words are about lines. So we've seen these in our PODs so far. Parallel lines are 2 lines that will never touch. 2 lines that will never touch. We've talked about that, like railroad tracks, they will never touch. The symbol that you're going to see us use on our shapes is they will use kind of like an upside down V, or sometimes they'll use 2 upside down V's. And I'll show you that when we get a little farther. But there are 2 lines that will never touch. Perpendicular are also 2 lines, but they're 2 lines that create 90-degree angle I should have said that create a 90-degree angle when they touch. Now, a lot of people think that perpendicular lines have to have already intersected. So like those are perpendicular because if you see really closely, we can see that there'll be right angles all along. Or some people think it's like a T. The lines have already touched and made right angles. Or we could even say like an L. Those two lines intersected and they made an angle. But what you have to be careful of is sometimes they'll trick you and they'll give you two lines that have not even intersected. But we have to know that, that when those touch, if this line was to continue, it would create a 90-degree angle. So that's why I said when they touch, because they might not have touched yet, but when they touch, they'll create a 90-degree angle. Okay, the next word that has to do with lines is congruent. Congruent is just a fancy word for equal. Okay, and the symbol that we're going to use is we'll use kind of tally marks when we show that sides are equal. Okay, our next group of vocabulary words have to do with angles. And you might remember these from 4th grade. An acute angle is less than 90 degrees. And I always thought of the cute one, because we always think of little things as cute. Little puppies, little babies, little things are always cute. Okay, a right angle is exactly 90 degrees. And we'll often see this shown with like a little box drawn. I've also said that if you needed to, you could get like a piece of paper, a separate piece of paper, and then you could take it and say, oh, does it fit in perfectly? Because all the corners of paper are 90-degree angles. And then an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees. Okay, so we might see something like that. It's bigger. Oh, and I should have drawn a cute one. An acute one's a smaller one. Okay, our last set of vocab words have to do with what we're going to be using for triangles. So we're going to use these 3 words when we talk about triangles. So I'm just going to draw a big triangle here to remind me that these words have to do with triangles. Okay, an equilateral triangle means equal. I'm going to underline that. It means all sides are equal. Okay, an isosceles triangle means that 2 sides are equal. And when I think of isosceles triangles, I think of an ice cream cone. So an ice cream cone. So if you think like an ice cream cone looks like that, okay, so I think of the ice cream cone to kind of help me. Okay, and then my last one is a scalene, and I always just remember, I know the equilateral, I know the isosceles, so the other one has to be scalene. That means that no sides are equal. Okay, now we're moving on to our notes. One of the things that people get confused most about when they're doing their notes is when they are doing these tests and these worksheets, they forget that triangles always have 2 names. So every triangle has 2 names. One name is given based on its sides, and the other name is given based on its angles. But they're only going to have 2 names, not 3 and not 1, exactly 2 names. Okay, so what are these 2 names? Let's look at a few of these. So here's some triangles. Now these aren't the only ones, but these are just good examples of what these triangles would look like. Okay, so now I'm going to name them by their side. So kind of what I wrote down here could help me. If I look at this triangle, these three sides look equal. And the way that I can demonstrate that is by using these tally marks. So this triangle's side name would be an equilateral. Okay, this triangle, these two sides are equal or congruent, but this side is different. So because it has two sides equal, this one would be called an isosceles. Okay, this one, this is the longest one, this is the next longest, and that's the shortest. So all three of the sides are different, so we would call that a scalene. Okay, so those are the three side names. Then there's also the three angle names. So this angle right here, if I think about a 90-degree angle would go there. So this is an acute. This is also an acute. And sometimes you might need to like turn the paper if you're not sure. Sometimes it helps to see, oh, this one's also an acute. So don't feel like you can't move your paper around to get a better angle. That's an acute. So because all the angles are acute, this is called an acute triangle. Okay, this one, this angle's an acute. This one's also an acute, but this one is a 90-degree perfect right angle. So because this one has one right angle, we call this a right triangle. Now this one is definitely an acute. This one, if you think about how big a 90-degree angle is, a perfect L, this one's bigger, so that's an obtuse angle. And then this one is also an acute. So because there's one obtuse angle, we call it an obtuse. Okay. So those are the two names that we're going to be practicing. Now, because I said it has two names, you would actually double them, and that's what we'll be practicing over the next few days. Okay, moving on to quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals are polygons that have four sides and four angles. Okay, this is going to be a lot to memorize, but we're going to have to know the names of these shapes. Okay, so this first shape that you see on the left, this is called a trapezoid. This is called a trapezoid, this shape. Okay, so to be a trapezoid, the characteristic or the attribute is, the rule is, trapezoids have to have at least one pair of parallel lines. So notice at least one. So they could have more, but they have to have at least one. So if I look at this shape, these two lines, this one and this one, are parallel. So I could use these little lines saying that, oh, when they continue on forever, these little V's, when they continue on forever, they'll never touch. That shows that they're parallel. So that shape is a trapezoid. The other type of shape over here, this is called a kite. And the attribute that makes it a kite is it has no parallel lines. So these lines are touching, these lines are touching, these are touching. There's no lines that are not touching. Okay, this is now where it gets a little tricky though. So this is a trapezoid. This is also a trapezoid, but this has a special name. This is called an isosceles trapezoid. So it's just a special type of trapezoid. Okay, so an isosceles trapezoid, its attributes are, it has to have at least one pair of parallel lines. So let's see. These same top and bottom are parallel, so we can draw our little symbols. Okay, what makes it a special trapezoid is it also has to have two pairs of congruent, and remember congruent's a fancy word for equal, two pairs of congruent sides. So this side is the same length as this side, and this side, I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. I meant two pairs of congruent angles. I apologize. Let's make a correction there. Two pairs of congruent angles. So this angle matches this angle, and this angle matches that one. It only had one pair of congruent sides. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so this is a special trapezoid. So it follows the rules of trapezoid, but it had other rules or other attributes. Okay, this shape is also a trapezoid because a trapezoid only has to have one pair of parallel lines, and this one has it, but this one has other attributes as well. So this is called a parallelogram. Okay, so what makes a parallelogram is its rule is it must have two pairs of parallel sides or lines. So these two sides will never ever touch. So we can put our, and then these two sides will never touch. So I can do two of them to show that those ones are a team. So those will have one symbol because they're a team, and these have two symbols. So this is where it gets a little tricky. This shape is a parallelogram, but it also could be called a trapezoid because it follows the rules of a trapezoid. And that's where, when we do our flashcards, that's where it will practice. Okay, ready? This arrow comes down here, and we all know what this shape is. This shape is called a rectangle. Okay. But what does it have that makes it a rectangle? Well, it also has two pairs of parallel sides. So let's mark those. That side and this side are parallel. They'll never ever touch. And this side and this side are parallel. They'll never ever touch. So this shape could be called a parallelogram because it follows the rules of a parallelogram. This shape could also be called a trapezoid because it has at least one pair of parallel lines. So we call it a rectangle, but you would be correct if you said it was a parallelogram. You would also be correct if you said it was a trapezoid. You would also be correct if you said it was a quadrilateral. So this shape has a lot of different names. Okay, the other thing that makes this different than a parallelogram, why it gets its own name, is it has 4 right angles. Right here. These are our 4 right angles. So to be a rectangle, you have to have these two attributes. Okay. Now, as I said, this rectangle is also a parallelogram though, and it's also a trapezoid, and it's also a quadrilateral. It's also a polygon too. Okay, we're gonna go up to this one. This is a shape called a rhombus. A rhombus. Okay, this shape, if you notice, the parallelogram went to this one. So this one also follows the rules of the parallelogram. It has 2 pairs of parallel sides. This side is parallel to that side, and this side is parallel to that side. Okay, but what makes it special? Why does it get its own name? Well, The other attribute that it has 4 equal, or we can use the word congruent, sides. This side and this side and this side and this side are all congruent. They're all exactly the same. So, okay, here's the tricky part again. So this shape's called a rhombus because it follows these rules, but it also follows the rules of parallelogram. So we could call it a parallelogram. It also follows the rules of a trapezoid because it has at least one pair of parallel sides, and it also follows the rules of a quadrilateral. So you would be correct if you called it a quadrilateral, a trapezoid, a parallelogram, or a rhombus. This is its best name. Okay, our last shape here, hopefully we know what this one is called, a square. Okay, notice that this is coming from a rhombus, which means it actually has to have the same rules of a rhombus too. So it has 2 pairs of parallel sides. It has 4 congruent sides, but it also has one more special thing. It also has 4 right angles. So let's see if we can draw these. It has this side is parallel to this side. This side is parallel to that side. So here's my 2 sets of parallel sides. It has 4 congruent sides, so this equals that, which equals that, which equals that. And it also has 4 right angles. So that's a right angle, that's a right angle, that's a right angle, and that's a right angle. Okay, so this shape has so many names. It's a square, but it follows the rules of a rhombus, so we could call it a rhombus. It follows the rules of a parallelogram, so we could call this a parallelogram. It even follows the rules of a trapezoid, so we could call it a trapezoid. We could also call it a quadrilateral. Or, the one line that's missing here, I'm going to draw a line there. We could also call this square a rectangle because it follows the rules or has the attributes that you need to have to be called a rectangle. So a square actually could be called so many different names because it follows all the rules of the trapezoid, the parallelogram, the rectangle, the rhombus, and the square. It doesn't follow the rules of the kite though. The kite says no parallel lines, so you can't call it a kite. Okay, it doesn't follow the lines of this because it says 2 pairs of congruent angles. Well, it actually has 4 angles that are all equal. Okay, so our plan is, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to keep practicing all this vocabulary. I know there's a lot of writing tonight, and I know it was all really small. Do your very best with having neat notes, and we will continue practicing this tomorrow. Goodbye. Have a nice night.